Well, folks, I tried to warn you. I really did try to warn you. I told you this man will be back with vengeance for week two, and vengeance he had with a 5-1 record for plus 7.6 units on your week two bets, Mr. Josh Frey-Sam, as we welcome the folks inside the janitor's closet, where we were a leverage penalty away
Mm,
by the Indianapolis Colts from a 6-0 sweep. It would have been special. We would have had sunglasses on.
yeah.
If you're new here, we do this bit where we got to ride our wins a little bit, but no sweats, no problem. We can do that again this week, Josh. Welcome, folks. We're gonna do our week three best bets coming off a red hot week two. Josh, we're looking to keep the momentum going, and we got two plays this week.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of funny as well, along with all of our plays, 1 week after the under was a huge hot play in week one. Week two is filled with overs, and so we'll see how this week shakes out. It's kind of interesting. Also, the other thing, and we were messaging back and forth just the other day, just about how the road favorites have been obviously staying hot so far this season. Could have easily been 12-0 to this point in the season, but they're 10-2 right now. They were, Ravens potential cover your ears, Bryce, a Ravens loss away. And then obviously that leverage penalty that you had mentioned with the Denver Broncos last week that cost us. It cost me a parlay. It cost the straight up record as well for road favorites. It cost a bunch of things. That was a tough penalty for the Broncos to take, but. So we'll see about the road favorites if they can keep up that record, and then obviously let's see how the totals shake out this week. But yeah, man, last week was a good week, and hopefully we can kind of keep this thing rolling here. Not as busy of a week though for us.
Yeah, less busy as a week, as you mentioned. We have two plays, one for 3 units and one for 1 unit, a player prop. But before we get into those, folks, if you're riding with the fellas, you want to show us some love, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment down below. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know how your bets are going this year. If you've hit any big parlays, stuff like that. We love chatting with the folks.
Yeah.
You can also follow us on X at TJC Bets. We will reply to any fantasy football stardom questions you have. Josh is great with that kind of stuff. So definitely follow us over on X as well. That's where our late picks are going to be coming in, and as well our newsletter, which is free to subscribe to in the description of this video. Get these plays right when Josh sends them out, places them for himself. You'll get that same access before any of these lines get moving. Josh, without further ado,
Yes, sir.
let's start with our player prop here. It's only 1 unit, and then we'll finish off with the big boy here. Let's start. Let's start in the Raiders.
Yes, sir. Vegas Raiders are taking a trip out east to play the Washington Commanders in the nation's capital there. And the play here, folks, is going to be a player prop. We had a little bit of success on the props last week. Let's keep it going. Why don't we? Why don't we? Ashton Genty under 71.5 rush and receiving yards, and we're taking that for 1 unit. Bryce, the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line has not been good this season. If you're an Ashton Genty owner in fantasy football, you're probably pretty frustrated right now. I think that I saw the stat was this week that Ashton Genty has accumulated 4 yards total this season through 2 weeks. Has accumulated 4 yards before contact this season on all of his rushes. He has accumulated 4 yards before contact, which is an absolute indictment of that Las Vegas Raiders offensive line. Now, listen, I didn't think that the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line was going to be good this season, but I didn't think it was going to be this bad. It just really hasn't been great. Now they're going up against a Washington Commanders team, which yes, they are probably going to be down Jaden Daniels this weekend. It's trending that way. So there could be more opportunity, more possessions, if you would, for Ashton Genty to run the football in this or receive the football in this game. However, the Washington Commanders have been a really sneaky, really solid defense against the run this season. They just held in check Josh Jacobs a little bit last week, even though while they were getting pummeled by the Green Bay Packers last Thursday. Josh Jacobs didn't pop off the stat sheet in week two there, and the week prior as well. They held their opponent in check, and so Washington, along with they have Javon Kinlaw there, obviously, and Daron Payne and company. They are wreaking havoc in the middle of the middle of that defensive line in the trenches there. And so it's actually been kind of a pleasant surprise, if you would, if you're a Commanders fan, because not gonna lie, I mean, after last year where the Washington Commanders defense was getting, you could do whatever you want on them. You could run on them, you could throw on them, do whatever you want. This season they've been really good. They're a top 10 unit against the run. And you combine that with the fact that the Raiders have not been good running the ball because their offensive line stinks. This is kind of works in our favor here. Now, we were going to go with just the rushing line, but the thing that I liked about the rush and receiving was that this bumped this up by like more than 30 yards or nearly 30 yards, I think, by taking the rush and receiving. Ashton Genty hasn't been used in the passing game like we thought he was going to be. Like, I mean, he had 2 catches week 1, he had 3 catches in week 2, and the defenses are swarming to him. He's doing the best he can, and so yeah, Ashton Genty's liable to pop one at any point in time. Don't get me wrong, there is some risk with this bet, which is why we only have it at 1 unit. But we're going based on recent history here, and what through 2 games are telling us, and through 2 games, Geno Smith isn't looking Genty's way. In fact, they're actually bringing in, Zamir White and Dylan Lobe on passing downs to go throw to them instead. So Genty's not getting the usual work that we expected him to get in the passing game, and then he's not finding any success in the run game and against this stud front. I expect it to kind of remain that way. The other reason why I kind of like this and why I'm not quite as worried about the receiving yards is that this Washington Commanders team, for as good as it's been against the run, it definitely hasn't been that good against the pass this season. And so they've been kind of a middling unit at best, more of like a bottom half of the league kind of unit against the pass. And so Geno Smith and that Las Vegas Raiders team that has been throwing the ball way above expectation this season, I believe they've been throwing it at over 77% pass rate over expectation this season. They're going to be looking to push the ball down the field to the likes of Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers and Deontay Thornton and Trey Tucker and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if Ashton Genty, who's typically going to be the last read in the progression, I don't know if his way is going to be looked that much in this game. And so I do like the way things are lining up in this one. I also gave consideration to the Vegas Raiders on the spread in this one. I do like the Raiders in this one. Didn't want to make it a play. I also gave consideration to Geno Smith's passing yards. I think it was at 239.5. It was just a little bit too high for my liking on the pass, but I don't hate it either. I wouldn't hate if he played that either. But the best bet for this week is Ashton Genty, under 71.5 rushing receiving yards for 1 unit.
All right, so we're high on Ashton Genty for his career. Not this game, though.
No,
That's
sir.
going to start us off his under for rushing and receiving yards. Now, Josh, when we looked at the NFL schedule for week 3 before the season, we looked at a matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Minnesota Vikings, 2 really exciting offenses. JJ McCarthy, obviously, getting his chance to take the reins in Minnesota with Sam Darnold leaving. Now you're in a situation where we're going to have 2 backup quarterbacks going here, right? We're going to have Jake Browning and we're going to have Carson Wentz for the Minnesota Vikings. Not how you
ready.
drew it up. Jamar Chase still against Justin Jefferson, so that's always going to be great excitement to watch those 2. Where are we going in this game?
Yeah, so Cincinnati's taking a trip to Minnesota there. The play here is going to be Minnesota -3, Bryce, and we're taking this for 3 units. So there's a couple of layers to this one, okay, and why I like it, why I came to this conclusion. Yes, Jake Browning took over last week, and honestly, for the spot that he was thrust into, actually looked pretty good last week. I'm not gonna lie. He did throw some interceptions. He threw a few interceptions, but he did for this again the spot that he got thrown into. He looked pretty good. I mentioned the 3 interceptions. He ranked dead last week in turnover-worthy play rate. Okay, I mentioned he threw the 3 picks. He could have thrown more in that game as well. I look at the matchup in this. I look at the matchup within the game here, Bryce, and I look at Jake Browning against Brian Flores, who's the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I look at the exotic blitzes and the amount of pressure that Brian Flores likes to bring on an offense, on a quarterback, and I just wonder if this is. I have a feeling. I think that this is going to impact Jake Browning and force him into some more wacky throws. He already had the highest turnover worthy play rate last week. Now he's going up against a strong passing defense here. So a couple of other things that are going into this here. He's going to get pressured in this game. The Minnesota Vikings are ranking third in pressure rate this season. Brian Flores is bringing blitz almost as high as anybody in the league, as he normally does. Jake Browning got the ball out of his hand at 2.42 seconds, which was the quickest mark of any quarterback in the NFL this season last week. So I do wonder if the blitz that Brian Flores is going to bring at him is going to force him to hold on to the ball just a touch longer. And if he holds on to the ball a touch longer, even though he's got these great wide receivers, that could lead to some more turnover-worthy plays. There are other things. I look at the guys who are coming back in this game. On the Minnesota Vikings side of thing, Andrew Van Ginkel, huge piece on that defense, could be returning in this game. I think he will return. Christian Darrisaw is logging another full week of practice. We know how big he is on that offensive line, and so he very well could return in this game as well. Ryan Kelly's status is a little bit up in the air, but I'm still confident that he might be able to go for this one. On the other side, you have Shamar Stewart, who is the rookie who has logged back-to-back DNPs. You have Cam Taylor-Britt, their defensive back, who has logged back-to-back DNPs. I'm looking up and down their thing as well here. DJ Turner's popped up on the injury report with a hamstring injury. He logged in a limited participation. So there's injuries here on both sides, or on the defensive side of the ball for the Bengals, not to mention they're obviously down Joe Burrow in this game. I think we're about to see just how important, not that we didn't know before, but we're going to see how important Joe Burrow was to this team. We have obviously the MVP futures bet on Joe Burrow, which is already chalked here. Thank God that was only for one unit. But we're going to see just how important he was. The other thing I look at here, Bryce, the Bengals so far this season have faced the Browns and the Jags defenses. So, yeah, the Browns, you can make the case they're good. They're stout against the run, but the Browns defense isn't the greatest in the league. And then they're actually pretty good. But the point that I'm getting at here is that the Bengals, they weren't able to run against them, but they could have. There is opportunities to beat that defense against the pass through the air. And they've also played the Jags defense, which has improved from last season, but is still not one of the upper echelon defenses in the league. The Vikes, meanwhile, have played the Bears, who are a solid defense. And then they've also played the Falcons, who are really surprising a lot of people this season. So I look at this being kind of a step down in class for the Minnesota Vikings. Meanwhile, I look at this being a step up in class for the Cincinnati Bengals. So I do wonder if these two teams are going to have different times adjusting to one another. The line on the look ahead for this game was Vikes -1.5. So that was the other thing that kind of went in my thought process here, was this line jumped to -3. I just wonder if Vegas is overvaluing JJ McCarthy's injury a bit too much here. Like considering the way he was playing, right? It's not like JJ McCarthy was shooting the lights out and so far. Joe Burrow is injured, and so you would think the Bengals are -1. The Bengals are +1.5. You'd think Joe Burrow's injury would probably bump that up to something like plus 5.5 in that range, and then JJ McCarthy's injury now brings it down to -3. I just wonder if this line should be more around that 3.5, 4 range, just considering how JJ McCarthy's how he was playing and the downgrade, quote unquote, to Carson Wentz. Now listen, Carson Wentz. So I think that we're getting a little bit of value here is what I'm trying to get at there. The last thing that I'll just bring up in this point here and what I liked here, I mentioned JJ McCarthy and how he was playing. I think that there's a little bit of a I don't like Carson Wentz is a downgrade from JJ McCarthy, but Carson Wentz also is I almost wonder if there's a potential for him to bring a little bit more stability to that position just because he is a veteran. Obviously, the Vikings went and acquired him just before the season. Kevin O'Connell obviously sees something in Carson Wentz that he likes about him and that he thinks he's confident about that can run this offense. So I just don't think that the Minnesota Vikings offense is necessarily going to take the step back against this Bengals defense that a lot of people think that they're going to. So for that reason, everything included in that. I know that was a very lengthy explanation, but we're going Minnesota Vikings -3 for 3 units in this one. And the Vikes are at home here, man. I mean, this is a tough place to come into and play, regardless of who's playing quarterback or who they got on the field. They obviously have a clear home field advantage here. So I think the Bengals. It'll be a competitive game. It might be a game that you bet on and you don't watch. You just check back the card after the game. But at the end of the day, I'm confident Minnesota can go out and cover this spread with Carson Wentz.
All right. So you heard it right there, folks. Minnesota -3 for 3 units. Our big play this week. We're going to be looking with all eyes on Justin Jefferson and that Minnesota offense to pop for us. That'll do it. Just 2 plays for now. Keep it locked on X at TJC Bets in case Josh sees anything else in the injury reports and the lines the rest of the week.
Yep.
We appreciate you folks tuning in. 5-1 last week. Let's go 2-0 here this week, Josh.
Yes, sir. And to that point as well, I do like plays in both of the primetime games this week. I like Baltimore a lot. And potentially a teaser coming in that Kansas City New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. So we're not sending them out yet, but stay tuned on X and subscribe to the newsletter so that you can get those plays if and when we do so.
All right, folks, keep it locked for those. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next week for our Week 4 Best Bets show. Gamble responsibly. We appreciate you tuning in. See you next week.